So the president has the power, if the Senate is in recess, to simply tap someone on the shoulder and decide that they will serve in office X. Could be the Secretary of Agriculture, could be the ambassador to NATO. And then, without a lot of to-do, that person can begin serving. There is a time limit on such appointments, which is that they can serve until the next session. And how long that period is depends on what kind of recess is at issue. And there are two kinds of recess. One kind of recess is an inter-session recess, and the other kind is an intra-session recess. So each Congress has two sessions in each Congress. They each last a year. So the break between the prior Congress and the first year of the new Congress, there's an inter-session recess there. And then between the first year and the second year, there can be an inter-session recess. But if you were to recess appoint someone during a recess, like, say in February, after the session for the new year has already started, that's an intra-session recess. Mm-hmm. If someone is appointed to an inter-session recess, they serve about a year because the next session is just about to start. And so that's the next session, and then you can only serve until the end of that. If you appoint someone, in the first year of a Congress, then they can serve until the next session, which is the second year, which means that the intra-session recesses can go on for longer. So there's a famous Supreme Court case about this. It was decided a decade ago. It's called Noel Canning. It's NLRB versus Noel Canning. And in that case, the President Obama was frustrated by the fact that the National Labor Relations Board didn't have a quorum. And so he put 3 people on that board so that it would have a quorum and it could start producing decisions. And that agency proceeds by doing adjudications, like each thing it does is its own individual case. And so they produced some decisions that were adverse to this company, Noel Canning, in the labor law area. And Noel Canning challenged it because President Obama had made those recess appointments during an intra-session recess. And the intra-session recess was very short. It was only 3 days. Mm-hmm. And let me explain why the recess was very short. In order to stop recesses, which give the president this opportunity to recess appoint, the Senate had taken to doing pro forma sessions. So they would actually not be conducting any business, but they would gavel themselves in and say, well, we're doing a session. And then they'd kind of quickly gavel the session out. And then on the fiction that the session was really continuing, but it wasn't. So President Obama took the position that he could recess appoint even during a recess as short as 3 days. So that issue ultimately gets up to the Supreme Court. What does the Supreme Court say? Unanimously, it affirms a judgment that invalidated the decisions of the National Labor Relations Board with these 3 Obama appointees on it. And what was the rationale? So there was a majority opinion, and then there was a concurring opinion. The majority opinion written by Justice Breyer, who's now not on the court anymore. The concurring opinion now that was written by Justice Scalia, who now, sadly is no longer with us. Justice Breyer said that there is the power to do intra-session recess appointments because there was an argument that the president lacked that power. And however, the court said that a recess of 3 days is not long enough for the president to exercise this power. In order for the president to be surely able to exercise the power, it has to last for at least 10 days, this recess. The concurring opinion said that there shouldn't be intra-session recess appointments. There should only be inter-session recess appointments. And since these appointments by President Obama were intra-session recess appointments, they were inherently invalid. So all 9 of them agreed that the NLRB actions here could be invalidated because they had 3 suspect appointees on it, but their rationales were very different. Mm-hmm. And so that's the world in which we find ourselves. And so I don't think the Supreme Court is going to revisit that case. I think they're going to treat that as what we call stare decisis, that it's firmly established. The rules are clear. And so if President Trump finds himself in a situation where the Senate takes a 10-day or longer recess, then he can exercise this power of recess appointment. Now, that's, call that the basic situation of the Senate agrees to put itself into recess. But what happens if the Senate does not want to go into recess, but the House does? In that case, there's another provision of the Constitution. It's the Presidential Adjournment Clause. Sorry to be so technical, but that's what these things hinge on. And it says that if the Houses disagree about the time of adjournment, then the President has the power to send them into recess for as long as he sees fit. And that power is one that has a check at the back end, which is that there's another constitutional provision that says the Congress has to meet at least once a year. So this is not the power. The President would not be, if he used this presidential adjournment clause, he would not be claiming the power to sort of like dismiss Congress. He could just put them into a recess, and there's a constitutional backstop for that. Now, for your viewers to understand, this presidential adjournment clause power has never been used. However, it is plainly in the Constitution. It is plainly a power that the President possesses. And we think, my co-author and I, and the Center for Renewing America more generally, and our colleagues there, we think that it's come time for the President to push back on this misshapen, distorted confirmation process that's evolved out of recognition. You can't be recognized anymore versus what the framers intended. It's time in the separation of powers hurly-burly for the President to use this power to push back so we can get back to something much more like the original confirmation process that was a lot shorter and a lot more reasonable.